Here.
Okay.
There it goes.
Pen back.
So, just for the record here, I'm Bill, and I guess everyone knows this is Claire. And Claire, you spell your name C-L-A-R-E?
Right.
We have a daughter named Claire,
No,
spelled C-L-A-I-R-E.
Yes,
which
I
is that
know.
more the French spelling? Whereas Claire
It's
without an
the
I is more the
French.
English.
With the
English one
I, yes.
Is more the French.
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not sure why we chose that. We didn't have
Well-
why we chose with an I. We have another daughter named Madeline, but we
I
don't.
think
But we don't
Madeline-
have the I with Madeline, so that's more of an English spelling.
Right. I think most people think with an I that it is French. I'm not awfully sure why, but
I think that might be right. I'm not
Yeah.
sure. And so you're going back. You're from England originally. Did you grow up in England?
I did, yes.
And what part of England?
Sorry?
What part of England?
A town called Eastbourne. It's on the southeast coast. If you care to see it, it's up there on the map.
Ah,
It's between Brighton and Hastings.
oh, I was going to
On
ask.
the
I was going to ask if it
southeast.
was close to Hastings.
Yes, it's between Brighton
Mhm.
and Hastings
And it's right on the coast.
on the southeast
And
coast.
and being on the coast, growing up, was that something that you remember strongly, living near the ocean?
Oh, very much so. My father, I think, always had a car, and every Sunday we went for drives in the car, and that was one of the places we went to.
To the coast.
Yes.
And would you? Now I know that the ocean around England is chilly. The water's cold.
Well,
Did you swim? Did other people in your family swim? Were the beaches
well,
good
my
for that?
mother did not swim. I actually never caught her swimming. My father did, but it wasn't a preoccupation of his. No, it was something my brother
Mm-hmm.
and I did whenever the weather was good.
Okay.
Yes.
And do you have what other memories do you have of growing up in Eastbourne?
Oh my goodness, I remember the ice cream shops on the way from my house or from the bus station to the seafront. We passed this ice cream shop,
Mm-hmm.
and the most vivid memory that I can't get out of my head was one day we passed this lovely ice cream shop, and there was a father there with his son. And the son asked his father if he could have an ice cream cone.
Mm-hmm.
And the father said no. And that was something I remembered. I don't know why.
Isn't it
but
funny?
I did.
Isn't it funny how certain situations
Yes, yes,
just stick in your head?
yes.
And that was one of them.
Has always stuck in my head.
Did everyone, when you were little, did everyone have refrigeration? As in like a
No,
modern
I'm sure
modern style
not.
refrigerator?
I'm sure not.
Mhm.
Not in the early days, no. You do know that I was born in 1931,
Mhm.
which makes me 92 years old. So
I did not know
we
that.
go way back, and
Yes.
I'm perfectly sure that there were a lot of people who didn't have fridges.
Were you living in England when the war, during World War
Yes.
II? And what memories do you have of that?
I have lots of memories,
Mhm.
but the one, of course, that I remember most was being evacuated with my mother
Mm-hmm.
and brother finally up to Derbyshire, where my grandmother lived, grandmother and grandfather
And that
lived
was further north.
north,
Yeah.
and away from the coast.
Sure.
Because
suppose
at
it was-
that time, people thought that the Germans would invade us.
Yes. And since Eastbourne was in southeast England, that was the closest place to continental Europe,
To
right?
France.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that would be a likely spot. So there must have been a coastal watch going on for
It was
any sign
very
of
much
activity.
so. Very much so. And most of the schools evacuated. That was with teachers.
Sure.
Um,
Teachers and whole classes would move.
absolutely. And out into the countryside.
Sure.
And but my parents didn't want us to do it that way, so
Yep.
that's why we evacuated up to Derbyshire to my grandparents,
Sure.
my mother's parents.
Yes. So the family, you and your parents
Were together.
were
My
able to stay
father
together.
wasn't with us though,
Okay.
which was a tremendous loss for me.
Hmm. Did you?
And I'm sure for my mother.
Yes.
But of course, in those days, at my age, I only thought of myself.
Hmm.
It was hard.
Was it? Did you feel? Was there just a sense of stress? Was there a feeling of stress
Oh yes.
about
Yes.
about your safety, about the country, about everything?
Not the safety part,
Okay.
because we were told quite rightly that where we moved up to was safe.
Yeah.
And
Is Derbyshire?
we
Is that north of London?
Oh, Derbyshire, yes.
Okay.
It's many miles.
So
north of
the
London.
bombs. So you didn't. No bombs in Derbyshire.
Well, the closest the bombs came was in Sheffield, which was a large
Sure.
town north of England and north of Derbyshire.
And northern
Yeah.
England was the kind of the industrial heartland
Yes.
at the time, I think.
This was, Sheffield was a very much a town of, well, quite a few,
Yeah.
what's the word? Quite a few, I do this, you have to know.
You lose
I
a
can-
word.
Barrel along and suddenly I stop because I can't.
Can you
think
describe?
of
Can you
any.
describe it?
Where did I stop? Oh, it was no, it was a good mining town,
Okay.
and probably added a lot to our here I go again. A lot to our safety.
Okay. And what did your father do during the war?
My father was a builder,
Okay.
and the government had him. There were also a lot of soldiers in Eastbourne, quite rightly, I suppose.
Keep going. Just making sure it's still running. Yep. Go ahead.
Yes.
So he was probably in big demand because there was probably a lot of construction that had to be
He was in big
done.
demand to inspect the living quarters that the soldiers
Sure.
had, which was, we had a lot of, still have, I think, a lot of boarding schools, for instance.
Okay. And those were used?
The army and other services just took them over.
Sure. Were there? I know a lot of American soldiers came
Yes.
at a certain point. My father came, for instance, and
Yes.
spent I don't know, at least a year in England before D-Day.
Really?
He didn't. He wasn't part of the D-Day invasion. He came
No.
just after.
Yes.
But anyway, he was in England for a good year. I know.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So they must have needed quarters for American soldiers as well.
Oh, absolutely. American, Canadian,
Yep.
Polish.
Maybe I don't know if Australian or
Yes.
New Zealand, perhaps. Maybe. Yeah.
No.
I'm not sure.
No.
And so when the war ended, you were. It sounds like you were maybe a teenager, and then did things return? When the war ended, you were a teenager. It sounds like, doing the math, and so
My brother and I both were, yes.
Did you go back to Eastbourne at that point?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, before the war ended, when my father thought it was safe, we traveled back down to Eastbourne, and I went to Eastbourne High School, and my brother went to Eastbourne Grammar School,
Okay.
and life continued. But it was wonderful to be with my father.
And were you really glad to be back in Eastbourne?
I was very glad. I was very glad. It took a while for Eastbourne to get back on its feet.
And it sounds like there was, after the war, there was rationing for quite a while, if my knowledge is correct, because the war was devastating, and there wasn't the food and other things that we have nowadays, and so it must have been difficult for a while after the war as well.
Well, of course, the food was, we had ration books, as they were called.
Yes.
And we had so many coupons for so many different articles
Sure.
of food. And that we had those books for 4 or 5 years afterwards, it seemed.
Yeah, until maybe 1950 or so.
Yes.
And so, and you would have been 18, so just almost an adult at the time things all of that ended.
I went to Eastbourne High School.
Okay. And then what happened after high school?
What happened after high school? I went, well, before I left high school, I used to give my time to a nursing home, fairly close by my house. And I had decided that I wanted to be a nurse. And so after giving some time to this nursing home, I felt fairly sure that that's what I wanted to do. So at the age of 18, I went to London, to the Westminster Hospital in London, and spent 4 years in training.
And living in London must have been a big change.
Sorry?
Living in London must have been a big change for you.
It was big.
Yep. Right.
It was quite big,
Yes.
and I never really got to explore some of the parts of London. And yes, so that's...
Did you enjoy London? Did you enjoy London?
I did, what I knew of it, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and the part that I remember was that all during the war, I remember how the bombings were evident.
Yeah.
And
there was a lot of destruction.
A lot of the office structures.
Yeah.
And that was rather sad because they remained that way for several years.
I bet. Yeah, I would think it would take years just to clear away all the debris.
Yes.
Before you can even start building again.
Absolutely. Yes. And of course the workmen were soldiers.
Oh, sure.
Yes. And so it was a matter of, having people to be able to do that work.
Sure. Thinking back to your childhood, were there family traditions? Were there things that you did at a holiday time, say Christmas or any other important day? Did you have family get-togethers? Were there things that you have fond memories of that you did?
I well remembered Christmas. We always had it, even when we returned. My memory is of Eastbourne, or my life, I should say, after the war, was in Eastbourne during Christmas. And we had the usual Christmas pudding and so on to eat, and we always had a tree with decorations on. And by the way, it wasn't a huge tree; it was a very small tree, as I remember.
Evergreen tree? An evergreen of some sort? Like a pine tree or a spruce?
No, I've no idea.
Yeah.
It was some kind of pine tree.
Okay.
And then to eat, just like I have always had it here on Christmas Day. We had flaming plum pudding for dessert. We always had turkey.
You did have turkey. Okay.
turkey.
So no ham, no Christmas ham.
No,
Okay.
no.
Was that a thing in England, a Christmas ham, or is that more of an American thing?
I think it's probably more the American thing.
Did you ever have roast beef and Yorkshire pudding? And the reason I ask is because my grandmother was Canadian, but she was very English in her manner, and her customs, and whenever we went over there, not every time, but almost every time, we had roast beef and Yorkshire pudding, which we loved.
We always had roast beef and Yorkshire pudding. I mean, Yorkshire pudding was never forgotten. We always had it with our roast beef.
Yeah, with the gravy on it and everything. What is Tell me about Christmas pudding, because I don't.
Christmas.
That's different than Yorkshire pudding, right? That's not the same thing.
Oh yes. Oh,
because I don't think that's an American thing, Christmas pudding. So could you say more about that?
I think, well, probably. I know Paul remembers me doing it, lighting the Christmas pudding and carrying, turning all the lights off and walking into the dining room with the flaming
fun
pudding.
Sounds dramatic.
Well, it was part of Christmas.
Yeah.
And you put surprises in the pudding. What did you put in? You had surprises for us in the pudding. What did you put in?
Yes, the pudding. I wasn't too terribly fond of that because I didn't want people to swallow the coins that I put in.
Oh, coins.
And that's what
Wow.
they did in England.
Okay.
There was
But what was the pudding itself? What was it made of?
The pudding itself was made of what, how can I describe it? It's more like the ingredients of a cake with lots of fruit.
Okay.
Mainly lots of fruit,
Yeah.
and of course the flour for binding and
Sure.
so on.
Okay.
Yes,
So it came towards the end of the meal?
yes,
Okay. And so you'd put coins in the cake, and people would take a slice and they would try and find what coins they had in there.
A little boy shouting, "Oh, I found a sixpence," or something like that. So anything you remember about? You probably don't remember about when I used to try to be very English and.
Oh, I remember.
No,
the family looked forward to getting the coins every year.
It was fun, and they enjoyed it.
Good.
Yeah.
But you did have turkey. But you did have turkey.
Yes.
I thought turkey was more of an American thing, but I guess that's not true.
Well, I remember we had turkey.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. So that
we had chicken as well, by the way.
Sure. So that was a Christmas tradition. Any other family traditions that you remember? Thinking back to your childhood.
I remember being a very naughty girl about the fact that I wanted a piano, just a children's piano, not a big piano, and I didn't get one and I screamed and yelled and stomped my feet and really was a naughty girl because I didn't get what I wanted.
Yep. Okay.
I remember that very, very well.
Yes. That's another one of those things that's emblazoned in your memory.
Oh, I was looking back on it. Of course, it was shameful. Most shameful.
Did you enjoy school? Did you enjoy
Yes.
grammar school, high school?
I did. I did enjoy my school.
Your nurse training?
Well, when we came back down from Derbyshire to Eastbourne, yes, I started high school, Eastbourne High School, and I really enjoyed it. And I remember playing rounders, which is another term for, what is it?
It's similar. I've played it before.
Yes.
In England, and it seemed to me like it was a precursor to baseball.
Well, that's exactly what I couldn't think
It
of
seemed
the
very.
name.
It seemed very similar.
It was probably was the beginning of baseball.
Yeah, I'm thinking, gee,
it
this
was
is where.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The rules were almost identical. The same idea.
Right.
Hitting the ball, rounding the bases, and the whole deal.
And there were people at each
Yep.
stop.
Yep.
And but we called it rounders.
And it was viewed. My understanding was that it was viewed more as a children's game.
A what?
As a children's game. And that it wasn't played by older people as much, like say adults.
Well, I think you're probably right. All I knew was that I played it in high school.
Okay.
Yeah, and I didn't hear about it other than that.
I only know about it because I'm a teacher, a retired teacher, and I taught for a couple of years in Belgium.
Ah.
This would be fifth grade or so, 11-year-olds. And one year we took a field trip to the southeast of England.
Yes.
We stayed at some coastal. It might not have been that far from Eastbourne. I think it was probably closer to Hastings, probably.
Closer to Hastings.
Remember, there were a lot of hops
You
farms
probably
in the
would
area.
Find it on the map.
I don't remember the name of the particular town, but I remember taking the ferry across to Dover, and then getting in a bus, and we went to some little seaside place that could put us all up, and I remember visiting a hops farm, and also visiting an English school where they taught us how to play rounders, and thinking, my gosh, this is probably where baseball came from.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's funny.
Oh, you must have. If you saw it, you must have realized it was so close to.
Yep. Very similar.
Yeah.
I don't think most Americans know that. I don't think they know that there's an English game that's very similar and preceded baseball.
Oh, I'm sure they wouldn't.
Yeah.
I mean,
I think they think it's an American invention when
Absolutely.
really it's probably not.
Everything is, though, isn't it, to the Americans?
Yeah, I think so. Even though if you I don't know, if you look at inventions, it seems like the Chinese invented half of the things that are important to us.
Right.
Yeah, but you're right. Americans are very provincial that way.
That's a very nice way of putting it.
Who was a positive influence on you? Who was a positive influence on you as a teenager or young adult? Maybe a teacher, maybe a relative. that was important to you?
I hadn't thought of that.
Should we come back to that one?
I remember an English teacher I had. She happened to be very pretty, very young, and the kind of person I gravitated towards. And I think she probably was more important to me in those days. And this was during the war, by the way, when we were evacuated.
Yeah.
Yes, she probably was more so than a lot of other people. My mother, of course, always was.
Sure.
And I'd love to say my father, but during those years I didn't
Right, he was gone.
get to meet him or be with him.
Sure.
So, yeah.
There's a British TV series that's on PBS, but it's a British series, so the PBS has aired it, called Foyle's War. Have you ever watched it? Foyle, Foyle, and it's set in World War II, and it's about a detective, a British detective, who's still a detective during the war, but all the stories are tied into the war because it was so it just consumed everything.
Interesting.
And it's set in Hastings.
Really?
Yeah.
Well, I haven't seen it.
You used to watch that every week. You forgot.
Have you seen it?
Foyle's War. You used to love that show. Yeah.
My goodness. You actually have seen it.
Oh, you and I used to talk about it every week.
Foyle's War?
Foyle's War, yeah.
Foyle's War, yeah. It was on for many years.
Yeah, it was maybe 15 years ago, something like that. You can still, the episodes are still up. You can still find them.
Yep. Yep.
So that's good. So you had a teacher that you really looked up to.
I don't remember it, obviously.
Okay.
Paul says I saw it.
I should, I've forgotten the episodes. I should probably go back and watch them all over again because I remember the premise. I just don't remember the individual episodes. But I just remember really liking it a lot.
I'm
series.
sure I would too.
Yeah. So you have your nurse training, and you're in London, and you're finished. And then did you start working right away?
No. I didn't. I finished my training, but those last 6 months, year, I had met a medical student and fallen in love at the time, and he came over to Canada after he had got his MD, and he wrote and asked me to marry him. And so at the end of my training, actually I did my part one of my midwifery training after I'd finished my nursing training. I finished the midwifery training, and then I got on board and came over to Canada.
And where in Canada did you go to? Where in Canada did you go to?
To a town called Essex.
Must be Ontario? I'm not sure exactly.
Essex,
I'm not sure
Ontario.
exactly.
It's about maybe 20 miles from
Toronto? Toronto? Is it close to Toronto?
no, it's
Detroit.
south of Toronto.
Oh, by Detroit.
Detroit.
What did you say?
Detroit.
So by Windsor,
Well,
so
it
kind
was
of by
right
Windsor.
across the river from
Oh, okay.
Detroit.
Okay. So by Windsor. Windsor, Ontario.
Windsor, that's the town I was
Okay.
thinking of. It was, yes, it was very close to Windsor. It's about 17, 18, maybe 19, maybe 20 miles from Windsor.
And were your children born in Canada?
One,
Okay.
my eldest son.
Uh-huh. Can you be a Canadian citizen can you claim citizenship by being born in Canada, or doesn't it work that way?
Well, yeah, it does, and at one time I was a tri-national. I was Canadian, British, and American,
Wow.
just for the convenience of traveling around, because
Yeah.
I traveled a lot when I
Yeah.
was young. But now I'm a naturalized American
Okay.
by virtue of my parents.
Sure. Okay. And here you are in
And
in
here I
St.
am.
Paul, Minnesota.
Absolutely.
How many years were you in Canada?
About 5.5, I think.
Okay.
Yes.
And then
And then we moved to Boston,
okay.
or close to Boston.
Okay.
Well, my husband, my then husband, went to the Mass General in Boston
Okay.
and took his urology training there.
And you stayed in the Boston area for a long time?
For about 4 years, 5
Okay.
years maybe. Yes.
And then after Boston,
After Boston, we moved to where did we move to?
Remember, we
Iowa
went
City.
from, pardon?
Iowa City.
Right, after we went to, yeah.
okay.
Iowa
So you're getting
City,
closer. You're getting
which-
closer to Minnesota.
Which is where my husband then had been promised a fairly good job with opportunities, and it didn't turn out that way.
I see.
So we stayed in there for 6 months,
Okay.
maybe, in a rented house, and then